Thank you. May I start by asking about the Dublin arrangements and what is going to happen, either in the event of no deal or indeed if there is a deal? It's been reported that the UK government has briefed the UNHCR and other NGOs that we won't take any more new applications from asylum-seeking children seeking to be reunited with family in the UK in the event of no deal, and no guarantee about what will happen if there is a deal. Safe Passage, you may be aware, Home Secretary has been with Lord Dubs just today to Downing Street to present a petition expressing their concerns about the situation. In the Chamber on Monday, I asked the Chancellor for the Duchy of Lancaster very specifically about Dublin 3 and unaccompanied asylum-seeking children, and I quote what he said to me. He said, "I am absolutely convinced we will maintain those arrangements. Given the discrepancy between what was said to me in the Chamber on Monday and what NGOs appear to be hearing, could you put on the record exactly what the position will be, both in the event of no deal and if there is a deal?"
Well, I think it's important to say that on leaving, once we leave the EU, on leaving the EU, we will continue, obviously, in terms of providing everything that we do in terms of asylum and the provisions that we have, and much of the cooperation that we have in place right now. I should also say that I have written to the Commissioner for Migration, very much looking for how we're going to pursue this post-EU exit, in terms of family reunification of unaccompanied asylum-seeking children in EU member states with family members or relatives in the UK. And that is something that is a priority for me and obviously for the department. So we will continue to pursue that through a newly negotiated deal. But in light of the UK's history in terms of providing protection for those who need it, in terms of meeting our international obligations, I mean, clearly that is something that we want to continue to deliver.
So would I be right in saying that your intention is exactly to replicate the way in which the Dublin 3 arrangements exist and operate after we leave the European Union and in negotiating new arrangements?
Well, first of all, I think it's important that we look to minimise any disruption at all, once we leave the EU. But I do think it's important to have the right kind of scheme that deals with many of the complex cases and complex issues that emerge, obviously, through unaccompanied asylum-seeking children. I've already mentioned for a previous example, look at things from a case-by-case basis. These are very complicated, as we all know. Resettlement is very difficult as well across the UK, and having the right kind of support.
I think we understand all that. I'm just trying to work out exactly what's happening to children who are arriving in this country unaccompanied and making applications. Will their applications be accepted?
So existing ones, yes.
And
absolutely.
no, but after potentially the 31st of October, or very soon, if there's no deal, will any new applications be accepted?
Well, the point is, let me just emphasise this, so for existing applications...
Yes, I'm asking about new... existing, I understand. What about new applications?
So specifically now, when it comes to new applications, we will ensure that obviously, if there's a deal, that we will be bound by the Dublin 3 regulations throughout the implementation period. And then, of course, this will allow for the return of third country nationals to EU member states. In a no-deal situation, obviously, we'll continue to run our system effectively, but importantly ensure that we have the right kind of protection mechanisms in place.
I don't understand what that means. Does that mean that they'll have exactly the same protection as they have currently under Dublin 3 in the event of no deal?
Well, no deal, let's be clear. Government wants a deal. So the government wants a deal.
Yes, I understand that too.
What we're working for, and in a deal scenario, we will continue.
But
to
in a no-deal scenario, will either an application that is in course or any new application be processed? Will it be possible for those applications to be made and continued?
Will continue.
Okay, and new applications?
It depends where they are. If they are in the, sorry to state the obvious, if they're in the UK and they make an application for asylum, then yes, we will process it in the normal way. If they're in the EU, which I think is the situation you have in mind, just to be clear, in a no deal, then presumably we are not in the Dublin regulations, so there won't be that framework in place.
Absolutely.
That is true.
But will you replicate something that will exactly treat those children in the same way as if we were still part of Dublin?
Well, but Dublin is a framework for cooperation between member states within the EU. It's not a unilateral mechanism.
No, I understand that, but the Chancellor of the Duchy of Lancaster told me we will maintain those arrangements. Now, I appreciate we won't be in Dublin, but how will we maintain those
because
arrangements?
Because there's an obligation on us under Section 17 of the Withdrawal Act to seek to negotiate an agreement, an arrangement with the EU or with member states to make provision for the transfer of unaccompanied asylum-seeking children, whether it's from the UK to the EU, which could be a situation, or from the EU to the UK, to be united with their asylum-seeking parents in here or there.